One of the reasons that we're reading Brave New World Revisited is to help you see comparisons across time and pieces. Huxley is seen as one of, if not the, forerunning author of the dystopian genre. His non-fictional essays, compiled in Brave New World Revisited, were written 20 years after Huxley wrote the novel Brave New World. He wanted to explore the themes and concepts he had seen in his novel that were parallel to what he saw in society. Your job will be to look for the themes he writes about in 1958 and how that compares to both your novel and to our society today, over half a century later. For this, you might want to use a literary connection journal to help you navigate the content of your novel, the content of the essays, and what it is that you're seeing today. This could be a potential tool for gathering your information for your final paper, or even just for constructing ideas for the final paper. There's no set number of items to do this because this is not a graded assignment. However, I want to emphasize how useful this could be to help you with your final paper. You could even use chunks of what you find and connect as part of your outline that's due in our last week of this unit. For this reason, I would like to encourage you to do this as you go along. I can promise you that it will make the last few weeks of class and the writing of your paper much, much easier. There is a direction sheet that you can use to get you started. There's also a document you can download to allow you to create a computer-generated document of this nature. I made sure that you had more than enough rows to meet the paper length requirements. However, if you decide that you need more, all you have to do is hit the tab button while you're in the last box of the table to make a new row. You do not have to use the computer. You can use a handwritten on plain notebook paper if you feel so inclined. Yes, you are allowed to use this for the paper checkpoint if you so choose. Why do all that work for nothing, after all? For this, you would have, data from the essay, a connection from the novel, a connection you see in society today, and that final one is optional, but it's also one of the most important because that is your literary analysis. It's your thoughts and reflections on how these tie together or on how these compare. The compiled essays by Aldous Huxley in Brave New World Revisited was put out in 1958. This is well over half a century ago, and it was published 27 years after he wrote the dystopian novel Brave New World in 1931, which was just over 90 years ago. The phrase the title stems from comes from the Shakespearean play entitled The Tempest, written around 1610. In the play, Shakespeare used the term brave to be ironic, as many of the characters that Miranda uses the term to describe are actually corrupt and evil. Huxley honors that irony in his own piece. A few of you might hear this term in your more modern dystopian novels as well. You might even notice some similarities between Huxley's novel and your more modernized dystopians. Huxley's novel uses the phrase to show a naive enthusiasm for social development that is actually negative for those under its ruling. The essays themselves, there are 12 in total, examines how present-day world started to resemble his fantasy world from his novel. And he mainly looks at the de-emphasis on individual identity and the use of scientific means to condition and manipulate the minds of citizens. As you read your novels this unit, look for the parallels. You might not have more than one or two, or you might see all of them. I've highlighted the ones that are fairly standard for the dystopian genre. To help you understand each, I'd like to give a small overview to get you started. Huxley's novel is based around one major corporation that spearheads the entire society and acts as the governing agency. In addition, society revolves around scientific progress and efficiency. In your novels, you might see one or the other instead of both. However, some of you will see both at play. In addition, all of the novels being used this term, there will be that one corporation in charge. This is normal of the dystopian genre. In addition, in Brave New World, babies are no longer conceived. They are now made in a lab, grown in a test tube, and incubated in those tubes. To further this, these babies are also chemically conditioned for social class. At certain stages of their development in the tube, they will either have elite chemicals ejected into them for growth and development, or they will have those withheld to stunt their growth and development. This is a form of both population control and class control from birth. For yours, watch to see if there's something similar. The fact that babies are now grown in a lab means that there's no more need for procreation or the family. These concepts have been abolished in this world. Even so, sex is freely indulged and engaged in with part of the children's upbringing in their lab setting, because they are no longer at home with their parents. And that is that they actually have children in elementary and primary school levels doing sexual play. It's a rather disturbing concept. To keep the family ties severed, citizens are conditioned out of having any sort of emotions or lasting relationships. This conditioning starts at birth and is instilled all the way through their upbringing, which again takes place in a lab. And that has to do with how these youth are being raised. Next, you have an emphasis on the collective. Everything must benefit the collective. This creates a lack of individuality. These 2 points tend to go hand in hand and are a normal aspect of the dystopian genre. So do watch out for those in your own novels. Another aspect in the novel, Brave New World, is the use of soma, which is a drug meant to tranquilize and pacify the user, which was all of society. This was to keep everyone docile and passive to what the major corporation was doing behind closed doors. With this aspect, you want to watch for entertainment or substances that are specifically used to control and or pacify the populace. Finally, there is one person who challenges and rebels against this structure. Your novel might have more than one, but there will always be one main ringleader. This is standard of the dystopian genre. The essays themselves, again, there are 12 in total, examine how Huxley's present-day world started to resemble his fantasy novel. You want to examine in yours how his world is reflected in your novel and maybe even reflected today. So your task is going to be to see if you can find those similarities between Huxley's reality, our own reality today, while connecting that to see what you have found in your own assigned novels. And this is why you're going to want those literary connection journals. Most dystopian novels look at social constructs specifically, and they make a statement about those social constructs. There are some distinct contrasts between Huxley's beliefs and the concepts of social ethics. As Huxley was one of the first dystopian authors, many who have come after have held up to these same contrasting ideas in their pieces. These are items I would like you to watch for in your own assigned novels. See if you can spot the social ethics being put into place in your dystopian pieces. Now, Huxley was a firm believer in individual dignity, whereas social ethics values conformity. Huxley also advocates for human rights. In opposition, social ethics imposes uniformity of those under its rule. While Huxley values individual uniqueness, there is a standardization implemented on society under social ethics structure. Huxley sees the beauty in each person's biological differences, but social ethics wants a cultural uniformity. This means that everything is the same across the board for everyone in every geographical area that they rule because that's what they want. And that's regardless of your heritage, your religious beliefs, or your background. Period. Finally, Huxley sees the importance of family ties and life. In the social ethics structure, there is only loyalty to work and the company to which you work for. This means that you have to give up family time, family connections, and even family constructs in order to please the ruling company. Huxley, in his essays, has a tendency to criticize the social sciences and the concepts that human beings are merely products of their social environment. In other words, he sees us as more than cogs in the machine, whereas those ruling the company only want cogs in the machine. Huxley dislikes that such thought and ideas discount individual talent and genius that has helped to create the society we have today. Under the social mindset, anything individual that you would be accredited to would actually be accredited to the company that you're working for instead. And in this way, freedom ends up being exchanged for collectivism and conformity. All of this leads to a loss of freedom. Huxley examines how propaganda brainwashes the people, which ultimately allows a centralized power to take over. This is made easier by the distractions that blind people to their tactics. Watch for these in your novel. What do you see that's the same in these tactics? What forms of entertainment are only there to pacify people and make them more submissive to the conformity rule? Another big loss of freedom comes with overcrowding. When there's overcrowding, things always seem to go wrong in these novels. It's easy for someone to disappear unnoticed, usually implemented by the major corporation's design. It's either explained away or not mentioned. Watch for characters that go missing, either with a small explanation that seems plausible to your characters or without much mention at all. They're just there 1 minute and gone the next. The rules that come with overcrowding can easily lead to making an individual feel disheartened and depressed because things feel impersonal. There is a loss of human connection. You might be able to relate this to what took place during the COVID pandemic lockdowns. Many of your characters are going to be seeking out human connection in some way. For some, it's an eye-opening experience they need. For others, it's their downfall. They will either seek human connection and retain their individuality, or they will seek human connection and end up receiving conformity while losing who they are as an individual. What characters do you see this happening to, and why? Finally, you have media's normalization of things that would allow to take a takeover to begin with. Because the media is saying, this is normal and okay, the people believe it. They don't even question it anymore. They just accept it. Watch for media normalization instances in your novels as well. While you're at it, you might want to start watching the evening news here and there to see if you can find parallels. Ask questions of your parents, your instructors, your coworkers, and anyone else you can think of who might have an opinion on what you are seeing. Are they accepting what's being said just because the media says it? Or are they too questioning the events that are being reported? How does this compare to your novel? How does this compare to what Huxley saw? And please watch and rewatch this lecture as you explore your novels over the next several weeks. You do want to be watching for these terms, themes, and concepts. Look for where Huxley was correct in his observations. Where are there parallels still drawn today? And what does this all mean for you as an individual, free-thinking, unique person of one? Put yourself in your main character's shoes, and then explore the concept of you. Will you stand and fight for what's right, like your main character? Or will you end up conforming? Like I said, once you explore a dystopian novel on this level, you will never see things the same again. I hope you found this helpful, and I look forward to seeing your insights as we embark upon this. I'll catch you on the flip side.